Today we're going to start the Mishnah on Pesachim Daf towards the top. 88b. It says, I'm allowed, someone tells his servant, it's really a slave, talking about Abed Kanani. And he tells his slave, say you shchait alai, as a Pesach. Go and shech to me the Korban Pesach. Sends him on a mission. Now, the Korban Pesach has two options. It could be a lamb or a goat, a kid, a young goat. Shachat Kedi, the servant went, the slave went, and he slaughtered a goat. So Yoichal, the master can eat from that. Shachat Tle, he shechts a sheep, a lamb. Yoichal, can eat from that as well. Shachat Kedi Utle, shech the two. Didn't tell him to shech two. But maybe he wasn't sure what he wanted. So Yoichal Min Arishan, the master is going to eat from the first one that was shechted. That was the Korban Pesach. And the second one will get bread. Shachach ma amalai rabbi. This gets complicated. The master actually told him what he wanted. The servant heard, doesn't remember what the master said. It was like confusing to him.
Is this an Eved Ivri?
No, it's an Eved Kanani. It's going to be a problem here later, you'll see.
Shchita.
Oh, I don't know if Shchita is a problem because a woman is allowed to shech. So Eved Kanani can also shech. Or maybe it doesn't mean actually shech. Let's say there's a problem here. Maybe it just means you should take it to get shechted.
Not the digression, but who can shech? An Eved Kanani?
I think an Eved Kanani can shech. What does it say in the first Mishnah in Chulin? A kol ksherim? Chutz mei cherish. I think it says a kol ksherim. There was a thesis over there about a woman. It sounds like a woman can shech. So anyway, Ketzad Yasa, what does he do in this case? Because here he has clear instructions from the master what to do. He just doesn't remember the instructions. So yishchait le ugedi. He should check both. The Yaimar, and he should say, Im Gedi Amali Rabbi, if my master told me that it should be a goat, so then Gedi Shalai B'Tleshali. Then I'll take the tzleh. And the Gedi will belong to my master. That's what he wanted. Im Tleh Amali Rabbi, if my master said a sheep, so a Tleh Gedi Shalai. Yeah, he has to have his master's instructions fulfilled in order for the master's Korban Pesach to be a Korban Pesach. He said what he wanted to be, which Korban Pesach he wanted. So he has to fix his master's. The only question here that's coming in is a double problem. Well, it's not. It's one basic problem. Where does he have the rights to take anything for himself? He doesn't have these rights to do that. We said by a chatzi avet chatzi ben chayren, he wasn't able to eat it all. Even his own, it was a problem. It was his own problem. But definitely from his master was a problem. We said that before. The master's making a mishliach, but he doesn't get anything that's privately owned. In this Mishnah, it looks like, oh, I'll pay him back. Really, you don't. There's no such thing. Everything that he picks up, even if he finds an aveda, belongs to the master. He doesn't have any ownership. That sort of ownership. Anyway,
I'm sorry. I'm still missing. What about hilchos shchita? An Eved, a non-Jew, can do hilchos shchita? I mean, I don't know. I'm missing something.
And an Eved Kanani is not really a non-Jew. An Eved Kanani is chayav b'mitzvahs, just like a woman is chayav b'mitzvahs.
Let's even assume, and he knows hilchos shchita.
Yeah, hilchos shchita today is a specialty. Back then, I assume that everyone had a knife and everyone could shech.
Everyone learned everything that has to go into shchita and have a smicha and okay, listen. Guys sit and learn it and fail it, and this guy just became an Evan and he can go shecht.
Yeah, But let me tell you on the other side, they had a shaila in by Kaparis in Los Angeles. They didn't know what the shaykhut there, whatever, but he didn't know. So they didn't know what to do. So they went and they asked the Mrs. Reichik, Rabbi Reichik's wife. She was an old school. They knew what's this, what's the, is this okay? Is this healthy? Yeah. Anyway, I think it was different.
How to do it.
Okay. So he's going to do this. So we have a problem over here. Ramesh is asking about the shchita. There's another problem over here. How does he own anything? We'll see in the Gemara. The Gemara is gonna clarify that. Shachach Rabbi Ma Omerlai. This is a big problem. See, before the master told him, I like lamb, and he doesn't remember. Did my master say he likes lamb or he likes goat? I can't remember. So he says, just in case, well, I'll take the goat and he'll take the lamb, or I'll take the lamb and he'll take the goat. Now, the master himself doesn't remember which one. The master some days likes goat, sometimes likes lamb. So, Shneim Yatzla Beis Shreifa. That's a problem. They both have to go, they have to be burned. The P'tur Malas Pesach Sheni. You see, theoretically, these animals are perfectly kosher. The rule is, Eina Pesach Nechal Ela L'Menuya. The Pesach is only eaten by people that were registered on it. They have to have in mind which one they wanted. If they didn't, then it's not their carbon, they're not allowed to eat it. They weren't registered, they can't eat it. So that messes up this whole thing. If it wasn't the one that they registered for, so they can't eat it, but it was still kosher. They can't eat it because they don't know which one. One of them they were registered on, so they actually brought the carbon Pesach. The problem with eating, okay, fine, you don't have to bring a Pesach Sheni. Gemara says Pshita. The beginning of this mission is obvious. It's obvious that he can shech for his master whatever he wants. Because the first case was, Tseyu Shchait Alayas a Pesach, he can shech the Gedi, he can shech the Tle, he doesn't have to confirm which one. So that's obvious. He didn't tell him which one, so he means he doesn't mind. The Gemara says, well, it's actually not so obvious. Because shachat Gedi Yoichal, Alfagav, the Ragol Betle. Even though he never eats Gedi, he always eats lamb. Nevertheless, he didn't tell him specifically, that's fine. Even though he always eats goat, he never eats lamb. Nevertheless, it's still acceptable. What's this, Aleph? The Aleph here. Ela shachat gedi utle yochal min harishan. But we do have a problem. If he shechs the gedi and the tle shechs them both, then he eats from the first one. But Tanya, nimna nashnei pesachim ke'echad. What do you mean eats from the first one? You're not allowed to be registered for two. What happens if he is?
I thought one is registered and one's not, right?
No, what we're talking about here is that the master told him to shechter me. The slave went and shechted two korbanos. We're going to determine later on which one was the one that the master meant. The problem is that what's really happening is that he's getting registered on two sacrifices.
Even though ultimately, no.
Right. Well, it's not ultimately one. There's two animals here. So when he wants to come to eat, could be b'shas shchita, he was really going on the other one. He was really registered for the other one. How's he supposed to come to eat? How could you say he eats from the first one? So the Gemara says, well, one's a gedi, one's a tle. How does he say which one it is? The Gemara says, masnisin b'melech b'malka. Okay, this is the Gemara gives us an answer that we have to sort of use our imagination to figure out how this works. It's talking about a king and queen. which may be Agrippa, and this is actually a reference to something that really happened, and maybe it's just hypothetical. But Tanya, ein nimmt aus Pesachim keachad, und meist Malka shamal avdem zu shachtu aleinu se Pesach, yatzu v'shachtu shnei Pesachim, v'al v'shalas hamelach. What happened was, it says that you can't be registered on 2 Korban Pesach. Can't take tickets on 2 lines. Then what it happened that they did. But it was a king and queen. What happened was the king and queen told their servants, go and shecht for us the Korban Pesach. Now, 2 servants went out and they each shechted the Korban Pesach for the king and queen. So they said, 1 second, this is a problem. You're only allowed to have 1 shechted for you. You can't have 2 shechted for you. Which was going to be the correct one? That's a problem. So they asked the king. The king seems like he had a good marriage. He says, go ask my wife. Rashi tells us that she was a Bekia the Chachama Haisa. She was going to know the halacha. Interesting. Baba Shalas Amalka. They went and they asked the queen. Amar Lahem L'chu B'Shalas Rabban Gamliel. Go ask Rabban Gamliel. She doesn't know the halacha. Ask Rabban Gamliel what's the din over here. Baba Shalas Rabban Gamliel. Amar Lahem Melech Amalka Daitan Kala Aleim Yechlam and Arishan. However, Anan Leinechel Leimin Arishan Leimin Hashem. Rabban Gamliel says like this. This could be the pshat. A king and queen, every food that they have is always tasty. Even if it's pasta and sauce, in a fancy restaurant, it's going to be good. In the yeshiva kitchen, it could be a different story. But so the king and queen can eat anything. It's going to be tasty. So Daitan Kala, whatever they serve them, it's always going to be good. They have all the ways of preparing it nicely and everything. They don't care what it is. So for them, for the king and queen, they're just going to take the first one. However, when it's Anan for someone else, that even though the person maybe doesn't actually care if it's this or that, he eats both, but he's particular about which one, because it's like coffee or tea. There's people that are just coffee, some are just tea, the chocolate or vanilla. They have that's what they like. They don't like the other one. So for us, if it's a gedi and a telah, you're stuck without being able to eat any of them. You were registered on both, and you can't have either one. By the Melech and Malka, they take the first one. By anyone else, they're stuck and they can't have anyone.
And they're exempt from Pesach Sheni?
Are they exempt from Pesach Sheni? Yeah, exempt from Pesach Sheni. It's just a problem of eating. It was definitely registered on one of them. It's just we don't know which one it would be. That's the thing. Okay. Shuv Pamachas. The Gemara tells us one more story along with this Melech and Malka. There was one time Nimtzis Halta Beisamit Bachayim. There was one time a lizard in the Shlachtas. That means but that's the area of the Beis Hamikdash where they did the Shechita. Sounds like when it says Suda, it sounds like it was a real Shlachta. It's not the Beis Hamikdash Shlachta. They wanted to say the whole meal was tummy. Kol Suda Kula. They went to ask the king. There was a lizard. Now the lizard is, when it's dead, is one of the Shmeina Shratzim, the 8 creeping creatures that give off impurity when they're dead. So Amar Lahem, they asked the king. Amar Lahem l'chu b'shalas hamalka. He says, go ask my wife. Go ask the queen. Go b'shalas hamalka. Went to ask the queen. Amar Lahem l'chu b'shalas Rabban Gamliel. She says, go ask Rabban Gamliel. Bo b'shalas, so they asked him. Amar Lahem Beisamit B'chayim reitech. Tell me, is it hot or cold in the shlachtas? Amar Lo reiteach. They said it's very hot in there. You can imagine, no air conditioning. So Amalahem Lachubi Tilo Alayam Kaishal Tzain, and pour a little cold water on it, onto this lizard. Halchubi Tilo Kaishal Tzain, Verichasha. They put some cold water on it, and it started to wiggle. The Tir Rabbi Gamliel calls to the Kula, and it turned out Rabbi Gamliel said everything is tar. It wasn't really dead. Nimtzas Melech Tali B'Malka. The Gemara finishes off that the king is dependent on the queen. V'Nimtzas Malka Tali Rabbi Gamliel, and the queen is dependent on Rabbi Gamliel. V'Nimtzas Kol Suda Tali Rabbi Gamliel. Comes out that the whole meal is everything is dependent on Rabbi Gamliel. Yeah, in the world they say this joke a little bit different. They say that the king is afraid of his wife. The whole world is afraid of the king, and the king is afraid of his wife, and his wife is afraid of a cockroach. It turns out the whole world is afraid of the cockroach. And so anyway, over here it says the whole world is dependent. The whole world is dependent on Rabbi Gamliel. Okay. Yeah, I know that there's a frog that freezes over the winter, and it freezes to the extent that even its heart stops, everything stops. Mamish, like for several months, and then it thaws out, and the heart starts pumping again. So it's just wild. Anyway, that's what's going on over here. They see this lizard. It looks dead. It's the opposite. It was too hot, but they turns out it was really alive. Okay. What are we saying? That ein nimne nach shnei Pesachim. The problem of ein nimne nach shnei Pesachim is because of Breira, that we can't go back and determine afterwards retroactively which is the correct one that he was actually registered at. That's the problem with the Rashi puts it. Okay, shachach masha amalei rabbi. If he doesn't remember what his master told him, so what he should do is he should shech both, and he should say that if my master wanted the lamb, then I'll take the goat, and if my master wanted the goat, then I'll take the lamb. The Gemara asks straight away, Shali, me? It's like a Chassidish question. Where do you get that ego over here? Shali, what's yours? What's his own? What's mine? He doesn't own anything. Everything belongs to the master. Amar Abaya gives an interesting pshat. He goes to a shepherd that his master uses regularly, and that would want to satisfy this master, because he always comes to him, he always does it. He always uses him. There's one exception. How an Eved is able to acquire anything is only if he's given a gift on the condition that his master doesn't take acquisition of it, which happens automatically, unless that stipulation is there. So he has to stipulate that this is going to be yours on condition that the master doesn't take part of it. So what does he need to get from the master? Does he need to get one or two? What does he need to get from the shepherd? One or two? Probably he needs to get two, both of them, because he's saying either or. Then what happens to the one that his master does take ownership from? So fine, it's not his. This becomes the master's. The one that is his, the master doesn't take ownership of. So I think he would have to get both.
How is it possible that something that he acquired is not his master?
Yeah, kind of rabbi. With the exception of someone gives a gift that says, "I'm giving this only to you on condition that your master doesn't acquire it." Yeah, some explain that the reason why we use a ring for marriage, because it turns out that a woman, everything that she acquires also belongs to her husband. So how does he give her a ring, and as if that's going to be a gift for her when he actually owns everything? He's not really giving her anything. So some explain that the only thing that she actually owns is her own jewelry. That's why they use her clothing and jewelry. Who would give her something else? Would give her, I don't know, a car. The car. It turns out that it wouldn't be a good condition according to this logic. Okay. Shachach Rabbi Masha Amalai Chulu. If the master forgot what he said, so that's a problem. They have to burn both sacrifices, but they don't need to make a Pesach Sheni. Amar Abaya Leishanu al Shachach Achas Rika. When did you say that they don't need to make a Pesach Sheni? That's because the animal was shechted correctly and it was offered on the altar correctly. In other words, at that point, we knew which sacrifice belonged to the master. When the time that the blood was sprinkled, the master could run in and eat the one that he wanted, which let's say was the lamb or the goat, let's say. However, if he doesn't even remember at the time of the zrika which one he wanted, and there's two sacrifices, when the blood was sprinkled, the sprinkling of the blood is the time that the sacrifice takes effect, that the atonement, or if it would be a sin offering, or the validity of the sacrifice takes effect by the zrika. If you won't be able to eat it at the zrika because you already forgot which one was yours, so then chayav l'aseh Pesach Sheni, then that's already not valid. So it's an interesting halacha that it has to be chazi la'achila, has to be fit to be eaten. And because in his mind he doesn't know which sacrifice was his and he can't be registered on two, so it's already a problem. Some said this slightly different, the same qualification, but they said it on the brisa. 5 people, they brought the carbon Pesach. When they're skinning it, they notice they find on the skin of one of them, after it's removed, they find a yabelas, which is a type of wart. That wart is a mum, a temporary mum, but it was still a mum. It could have been removed before, it wasn't. And so therefore, that sacrifice was invalid. No one can eat it. They don't have to make a carbon Pesach, because the Pesach, well, 4 of them definitely don't need a Pesach Sheni. And one of them, we'll see, has his own problem why he can't make a Pesach Sheni, but they're exempt from making a Pesach Sheni. The Gemara is going to discuss. Amar Abaya. Abaya comes along and says that same qualification of Leishan al Shenusarba Chazrika. When did the hides get mixed up? That's after the Zrika. That means at the time of the Zrika, 4 of them had a kosher Pesach. They had their carbon Pesach was kosher. They could have eaten it then at the time of the sprinkling of the blood. But if it was mixed up before the Zrika, that means that the hides were confused. One of them was puzzled. And therefore, none of them were chasi la'achila, because it was already a confusion at the time of the Zrika. So then, chayav l'aseh Pesach Sheni, that's not considered a valid carbon Pesach. And for none of them, we have 5 over here, right? So they have to make a Pesach Sheni. Now the Gemara says that we had two ways of using the statement of Abaya, either on the Mishnah or on the Brisa. The one that learns it on the Mishnah that says that the confusion by the carbon Pesach, which one was the correct one that he registered for. So if that is only until the Zrika, but after the Zrika there's a problem, then on the Brisa, it's for sure a problem after the Zrika. One of them was puzzle, it's for sure a problem. Mandamasnia Brisa, the one that taught it on the Brisa, but it doesn't have to be on the Mishnah exactly the same. It could be on the Mishnah, it's still kosher, even if by the time of the Zrika, the owner doesn't remember which sacrifice was the one that he wanted. Why? Given the ksherim in the Mishnah, they're all kosher. The Yidkar Havichasilachila, Kamishmaya Galia. God knows which one was the correct one. There's no psul here. In essence, there's no psul. He happens not to remember. but the information is clear. When it comes to the brisa, though, one of them is actually puzzle, and it's intrinsically, there's an intrinsic problem that even though 4 of them are kosher, but because there's a confusion which one, it's not chazi lachila, it's a little vague, because why don't you say kamishmaya galia as well? Kamishmaya galia. Because over there's still one that's puzzle. Or else there's no one that's puzzle. Kamishmaya galia, they're both kosher. That would be fine. Amar Mar, we learned before on the brisa, Pesach Sheni. They don't have to make a Pesach Sheni. Why don't they have to make a Pesach Sheni? Because the sacrifice was good. 4 of them were good. What's wrong? Yeah, it's a fake world. On the bottom of Peches. The Gemara says, 1 second. You have 5 people bringing Korban Pesach. One of them was not valid because he found the wart on the hide. Now that got mixed up, but it got mixed up after the Zrika. If it would have been before the Zrika, it would be a problem. After the Zrika gets mixed up, they just can't eat it. They're exempt from making a Pesach Sheni. Now the problem is, there was number 5 that was not Yaitza. The word Nafik means Yaitza. He wasn't, one of them didn't fulfill his obligation. So why do we say we're exempt from making a Pesach Sheni? You hear the problem? 4 of them are exempt, but one of them is not. It's a real question. The Gemara answers this, says Mishum Delayafsha, because we don't have a solution. We don't have a solution. Yeah. Whenever we come across these things, it always bothers me because it's I'm answering a halacha based on the physical world, based on the practicality. I would like that the practicality should be based on the halacha. The Torah is the blueprint of creation. Now we're saying we're not able to follow the halacha because of a limitation that we have in practicality. Mishum Delayafsher, because we don't have any other solution in the world. We don't have any. Heichi Lavid, how do you want to do this? Leisi kol chad v'chad Pesach. It's still a halachic problem. Do you want each one to bring a Korban Pesach again because of this mistake? There's one of them that's puzzle, and you have 5 people here that will bring another one. That's a problem. If they can't bring it again, 4 of them already brought the Korban Pesach. That's going to be chulin, mundane animals being brought into the courtyard of the temple. That's not allowed. What do you want? What else can you do? Instead of bringing all separate korbanos, why don't you just bring one sacrifice? In one of them, definitely, it's no problem with chulin lazara because one of them definitely needs to bring a new sacrifice. He's number 5. He was the invalid one. So, and then all of them will just join together just in case because they don't know who's who. That's a problem because that's going to be Pesach Nechel Shleilim Nuyav. 4 of these people are not supposed to be eating this Korban Pesach. They were registered on the previous Korban, which was kosher. Can't do that. So, hi, Mike. What's going on? Nisi kol chad minayu pischai. Let each person bring a Korban Pesach. V'nisni, and make a condition. V'nema. Idi balmum. If mine was the balmum, I was the number 5 that had the wart on the hide. Haidaisi hashtan avi Pesach. So what I'm bringing now is the Korban Pesach. V'idi tam. If I had a kosher Korban Pesach before, haidaisi hashtan avi shlamim. So what I'm bringing now is a shlamim. A Korban Pesach and a Korban shlamim are very similar. So if it's not a Korban Pesach, shlamim. So we have a solution. Why are we saying they don't have to bring Pesach Sheni? Because it's impossible. Even the fellow that wasn't Yaitze, it's impossible. We have a solution. They each bring a Korban Pesach and they make a condition on it. If it's not the correct Korban, then it will be a Shlam. where it says layafshe. You can't do that. It's impossible. Mishum dika chazav v'shaik the kayanim who the achlile. How are they supposed to feed the chazav v'shaik that of a shlamim? How are they supposed to feed that to a kayan? The kayan brought his own korban pesach. He's not allowed to eat this. If it's, let's say it's two options. We look at the sacrifice. Maybe it's a shlamim, maybe it's a korban pesach. If it's a shlamim, you have to give the chazav v'shaik, the chest and the leg and the thigh. But maybe it's a korban pesach. But the kayan can't eat it if it's a korban pesach. The kayan can't eat it if it's a korban pesach because he had his own korban pesach. So the Gemara gives a solution, another possibility. Nesi kol chad v'chad kayan ba'adei. Let each of these 5 people partner up with a kayan. And what they'll do is like this: they'll bring this sacrifice, and they'll say that I'll give it to you. You'll take the chazav v'shaik. Hi kayan echidami. 1 second. You're not thinking this through. The Gemara is saying you understand the problem, but you're coming up with a solution that doesn't resolve the problem. Resolves the problem for the individual. It doesn't resolve the problem for the kayan. Ida avid pesach. If the kayan had another korban pesach, dilma hai pesach. So 1 second. Now he's having another korban pesach. Nimtza pesach nechas l'mnuyev. This kayan wasn't registered on this one. He was registered on his own. Vida lo yavid pesach. Oh, we'll have another. The kayan that he partners up with, don't bring a korban pesach, and only this one. This dilma shlamimu lo yavid pesach. Now you're leaving him without a korban pesach because we don't know what the sacrifice is. The sacrifice could be a shlamim, could be a korban pesach. He brought it on condition, right? He brought it with if it's this, that if I was the one that had the mum, then this should be my pesach. If I was the one that was kosher, then this should be a shlamim. And now this kayan is now thinking that he's bringing a korban pesach. Really, just ate a shlamim, and he never brought a korban pesach. V'nesi kol chamisha chad kayan lo yavid pesach nimna alei. Hani chamisha pesachim. What's it saying now? We have a solution. Very interesting solution. It's a good solution, actually. What was the problem that we had? Each person partners up with a kayan, and they say that if it's a shlamim, then I'm giving it to the kayan. And if it's a korban pesach, then the kayan will be eating this, will be his korban pesach. The problem is let's say it's a shlamim and the kayan never brought another korban pesach, and he's going to end up without a korban pesach. We have a solution. All 5 join together. Bring 1 more korban and make the same condition. If it's a shlamim, can't be a shlamim. Bring it as a korban pesach. And bring a kayan along. Now, right now, it's definitely a korban pesach for one of them, because one of them never brought his korban pesach because he's the one that had a mum. So all you need is 1 korban pesach for all of them. I don't know which one it is. 1 kayan to eat the chazav v'shaik. No, why do I need the chazav v'shaik? It's definitely a korban pesach. We said that before. 1 second. Nishikulu chamisha chad kayan v'lo pesach v'nimni alavei hani chamisha pesachim. Oh, they're still going to have each their own korban, but they'll each use 1 kayan, the same kayan. That's what they're going to do. They'll each use the same kayan. Now, he's going to have a lot to eat. There's 5 people bringing karbanis now. Each one of them makes his own condition. One of them is for sure korban pesach. All we're doing here is resolving the kayan's korban pesach. But he has to eat the chazav v'shaik from each of these, because could be there's a slum, we don't know which one. It's a big meal. A chazir v'sheik. 5 chazir v'sheiks. Yeah, he's eating the chazir v'sheik of the Korban Pesach as well. No, that's fine.
Why?
Because the chazir v'sheik of a Korban Pesach is eaten by the owners. If it's a shlamim, it's eaten by. No, not that he can't eat. No, just by a shlamim, he gets the chazir v'sheik. He has to get the chazir v'sheik.
So in other words, that's generally speaking.
Right.
But by
In a Pesach, you can get any part. You can get the chazir, including the chazir v'sheik. So he's just a regular guy over here. If it's a Korban Pesach, if it's a shlamim, then he's unique. He's a kohen. The problem is, we come up with a new problem. If it's a shlamim, then a shlamim has 2 days and a night, the middle night, to eat the shlamim. To come from Pesach, you only have that night, possibly only until midnight, or until the morning. We don't like to do that because if you diminish the amount of time of the Korban Shlamim, then it's going to end up going to be puzzled at an earlier time. It's not correct to do that. So the Gemara says, well, we have another solution. Neisei Meiser Pesach. There's another concept. It's called Meiser Pesach. Meiser Pesach is if there's an extra Korban Pesach that you bring along. Meiser Pesach is like a shlamim, but it's limited on the amount of time that it has to be eaten. It's only 1 day. It says, so today, it's going to be longer. Is it going to go until the morning? But what we're resolving here is we're not stopping the amount of time that we would have for a Korban Shlamim, because we're going to use a Meiser Pesach instead, an extra sacrifice of a Korban Pesach that's brought, like the overflow, sort of like the extra Korban Pesach that was there. They're going to bring it. And you could say like this: Ididi balmum haidai stash nevi Pesach. If I had the one that was a balmum, so this is now my Korban Pesach. Ididi tam. If I had the kosher Korban before, nevi haidai sihash the shlamim. Shlamim the Meiser Pesach. The Meiser Pesach nechali and v'lai lechet, because the Meiser Pesach is eaten for 1 day and 1 night. If I had the mum before, now I need a Korban Pesach now. If I had the kosher one before, now this would just be a Meiser Pesach. The Gemara says, 1 second. You're introducing this new type of sacrifice here, this Meiser Pesach that has a limit on it of 1 day, right? Do you separate a sacrifice originally to have an extra one? You're creating a new sacrifice, an extra sacrifice before you had the first one. Meiser Pesach is supposed to be, if I happen to have a Pesach that's left over, that wasn't necessary to be brought because people were registered on other ones, I can still bring this along and it will get eaten. And it has a day and a night to eat it. But l'chatchila, to go ahead and designate, you're not supposed to do that. So the Gemara says, well, that's not a problem. I'll go put an ad in the paper. Does anyone have a Meiser Pesach that's in Yerushalayim? They'll go around with loudspeakers in the cars. Anyone have a Meiser Pesach? I'll use that. You anyways have a Meiser Pesach. I'll use that Meiser Pesach, and I can switch who's registered on it, and I'll take that and I'll bring that now, and I'll make the condition. If mine was Pesach, if mine was correct, then this would be a Meiser Pesach. Elamishum smicha, there's a problem. Pesach, you don't lean your hands on it. A shlamim, you do lean your hands on it. A Meiser Pesach, you also lean your hands on it. Vila Pesach by smicha, vila Meiser by smicha, you have to lean your hands on it. And if you lean your hands on a sacrifice that you're not allowed to, that doesn't require it, then it's a prohibition, because you're getting support on a sacrifice that's not the halacha. You're not supposed to do that. Where it says, well, I see you have a problem. you don't have a solution. But when you've said in the Mishnah or in the Brisa that you said in the Mishnah that you don't need to bring a Pesach Sheni. Why don't you need to bring a Pesach Sheni? Because 4 of them were already Yaitze, and 1 of them doesn't have a solution. And that's what we're going through now, that there is no solution to bring another sacrifice to help him out. So there's no Pesach Sheni. Why is there no solution? Because even when you come up with all of these tricks, you bring another one and you have this condition and that condition, you say it's a Mesa Pesach, you're still stuck with one question. Should you do smicha on it? If it's a Korban Pesach, then you don't. And if it's a Mesa Pesach, then you do. And that's a problem. The Gemara says, yeah. However, Korban Nashim, you don't do smicha on it. Let's say it was women, that case. So over here, there is a solution. They should bring another sacrifice. Ela Mishum. Mesa Pesach is an extra Korban Pesach that it was designated. Someone had an extra Korban Pesach designated that he didn't need. So it could be brought as a regular shlamim, and that would be maybe one was lost and he designated another one. He found the first one. Yeah. How did it become a Mesa Pesach? No, shlamim could be a male or female, but it could also be a male. Now, Korban Pesach is a male. So here when we say Korban Nashim, we're not referring to the female Korban. We're talking about a female that's bringing a Korban, a female human being. Right? So, but now the problem of smicha just disappeared. We don't have a problem of smicha anymore because it could be it was women. Women don't have to do smicha on the sacrifices. Elamishim matana is rather the way the blood is put on the altar is different between if it's a shlamim or if it's a Korban Pesach. Dila Pesach matana achas. Dila shlamim shtaim shein arba. Korban Pesach is put one pouring. Is it a pouring or sprinkling? Matana achas keneged hayesod, right? One putting it on the altar, and the other, and the shlamim is 2 sprinklings on the altar. The Gemara says, "My nafkamina, that's not a problem." But tanan calling tanam al jechitz and shnitmat b'matanachas keeper. Did the eved? If you did one, it's still going to be kosher, so that's fine. Elamishum the ilu pesach b'shvicha v'ilu shlam b'zrichis. The Korban Pesach is not sprinkled; it's poured, but the shlamim is sprinkled. My nafkamina tanan kolanitan vatanya kolanitan b'zrika shnat b'shvicha yatzer. Doesn't matter. Bid the eved, if you pour it, it's also good. So bid the eved, it's going to be yatzer. Aimar the kamrin and the yavad lechatchila nami. Do you say the lechatchila you're allowed to go ahead and do this? So since the lechatchila we have a problem of bringing another korban for this one fellow that doesn't have that wasn't yaitzer, which we don't even know who it was. So therefore, they can't bring another Korban Pesach, and they also can't bring a Pesach Sheni because they don't have a solution how to do that. So 4 of them really didn't need the Pesach Sheni. 1 of them we just don't have a solution for. Okay, we're up to the Mishnah. Haimel of night. Haimel Levanov tells his sons, "Harini Sheikh as a Pesach al Mishayalim Kam Rishon Yerushalayim. Kimin Shechnes Rishon Roisha Berubai Zacha Bechalka Mezaka Zacha B'Imay." This is a classic story of a father trying to get his children to get out of bed and hurry to come to davening in the morning. But this is, he says, whoever gets to Yerushalayim first is going to get be part of my Korban Pesach. It's going to get a good piece of the Korban Pesach. So as soon as that person gets his head and body into Yerushalayim, so he gets his portion. And the other people go along with him. Now, this is a little odd. It seemed like the father was only registering one of the children. Now we're seeing that he's registering the others as well. So we have to see what this means. Shema mina yesh breira. We see that we're assuming that the sacrifice was already slaughtered in the afternoon, and this guy's just showing up now in Yerushalayim. And it's being determined now which one is the one that the father had intended for later on. Rabbi Yochanan says that's not what's happening. He registered all of them. Just this one's gonna Kedil Zar's and Mitzvah's come on. They can I'll prove it to you. The Ketani Mazaki Achavimai. He says that the brothers joined together with him. So for somehow, I'm not sure how this works, but somehow this one brother is considered the head of this group, and the brothers can join in together with him, but he's considered the head. Maybe it means he gets the best portion, he takes first or something. I don't know. If you say that they registered all of them originally, then good. But if he didn't register them beforehand, can they become registered after the shechita? But it says that only until the shechita can you register or back out of being registered. Yeah, so we're saying now that the father registered them all. We were thinking that the father only registered the one first, and then we're in the 1 second. How did that means yesh brera? Brera means retroactively. It's determined which one he registered. He didn't know which name to put down, right? So whichever one will come later, that's the one that's going to go. That would be a raya that yesh brera. We say no, there's no raya to yesh brera or not. We're talking about here that he registered all of them. He was just trying to encourage them to come first. The one that comes first is going to be the head of the group. And he proves it. He says otherwise, until the shechita, you're able to register. You can't register at that. Tanya Namihachi was also taught, was such a story where the daughters came first. And it turned out that the daughters were the ones that were energetic and the sons were lazy. I don't know why the Gemara is so surprised at this. It's very typical. It was like, oh, big story. Of course, it's always like that. You can't get the kids to do the boys to do anything, right? It's the girls that are doing all the. Okay, you can't rely on the boys, that's for sure. Let's see. You can still register until there's a kazayas for each person. You, as we just mentioned, that you can register or deregister until the shlita. Reb Shimon says until the blood is sprinkled. He's talking about not registering, but deregistering, backing out. You can do that until the blood. Micah Mashma, what's the chiddush? You need a kazayas for each one. It turns out that there is one opinion that holds that if people back out, you always need one person still there from the original group. Now we're saying the chiddush is that even if everyone backs out, you can still get this going again with a brand new group. You can back out according to the Tanakama until the shechita, and Reb Shimon extends that time of backing out of a korban Pesach until the zrika. Amar Abaye machlekes limashech. Abaye explains that that's only a machlekes regarding backing out. The Rabbanan Savri Miseh, it says that if there's too few people in the house, so they join together. And then for the lamb, then you join other people together to this group. From the life of this, that's when you're allowed to join more people. Reb Shimon Savar mehaviyasa deseh, from the existence of the. So in other words, the Rabbanan hold till Shlita, they hold until the sacrifice is done. But when it comes to registering, everyone holds that you only have until the Shlita, according to the amount of people, and then Tachaisu, which means Yeshach. The word Tachaisu means Yeshach. We have another brisa that also says that it's only regarding the backing out of a korban Pesach that you have until the Zrika, according to Reb Shimon. Let's leave it here.